Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We want to thank you for joining us on this Sunday afternoon as we come together to kind of have a conversation and have your involvement in this space together. My name is Antonio Blow, and I serve as the educational chair for the North Carolina State Conference of the branches of NAACP. And today we have some partners and friends that are going to come and they're going to share, and we're going to talk about how we unpack the plan and how the Leandro Plan advance equality and how it advance our young people in public schools. So we're happy to have with us today Every Child NC, who does a lot of work around focusing on promoting equality so that race, ethnicity, economic background, regional location, disability, gender identity, sexual orientation, immigration status, and language are not barriers to educational opportunities. And our vision, or the vision of Every Child NC, is that all students, and that means every single student, in particular, those students that are underserved and vulnerable student groups, receive funding and receive support that is needed to move forward in the education that has been promised to them. Also, we're happy to have Pastors for NC Children, and Pastors for NC Children is not just another educational organization. We are an independent ministry and an outreach mission group that is comprised of pastors and also made up of church leaders from across our great state, and organizing to support public educational opportunities for all of our children. So the work there is to mobilize the faith community for public education. And so we are grateful that all of you have joined us today, and knowing that the NAACP, that we continue to advocate for policies at the state, the federal, and the local level to make sure that the educational standards and allotted resources and to set the priorities for education and the workforce, because we strongly believe that every child deserves an opportunity to reach their fullest potential, but our educational system seems to be collapsing. And so today we have partners, and our partners with the NAACP for the state of North Carolina is here to share with us. And we're so excited about this moment and this time that we are going to share together. So thank you again for joining us, and we yield to our partners.
Thank you, Antonio. Welcome, everyone. I am Naomi Hodges, one of the coalition coordinators for Every Child NC. And I want to start us off with this video and to kind of get us in the mindset of what we're going to talk about today.
Public schools of North Carolina are part and parcel of our state and its great progress. I shall do all I can to preserve them. But let no one be misled as to how I personally feel about mixing the races in school. I'm unalterably opposed to it, and I intend to continue seeing that our state uses every lawful and proper means to prevent it.
3 generations ago, it was segregationists versus integrationists. We fought each other to see if black and white children could even learn in the same classroom together, dividing North Carolina. Children who just wanted to learn, with an education system unwilling to let them. After years of pushing, the students prevailed. A state long known for refusing to educate half its population became a state known for one of the greatest public university systems in the world, and a leader in the South for investing in its schools. In North Carolina, we value education. We are proud to attract students from every corner of the globe. We know how to provide a world-class education. It's time we provided one to every child in North Carolina, from pre-K to 12th grade. No more segregated tracking, no more police in schools, no more underpaid teachers. Instead, we need to invest in our youth, invest in the arts, invest in mental health, invest in making our schools healthy and vibrant for everyone. The highest quality of education for our children should be the expectation, not the exception. It's time to come together, North Carolinian with North Carolinian. Kids who just want to learn need an education system there to support them. It's time for us to come together and fight for what's right.
So I've got
So-
my essay written.
No, okay. So that video was Jakob Lima, who's a rising senior at UNC. He went to Enloe High School in Raleigh, if any of y'all are in Raleigh. But I think something that he really points out is he, as a student, understands what the investments are needed for our education. And that's what we're here to talk about. What are the investments that we need for our education, and how do we get them? And so another way to start us off is also for me to talk about how I kind of realized when my school, when there was inequity within my own school, within my own district, and across districts. And feel free to put your own responses in the chat. Like, when did you realize that our schools are inequitable? And throughout the discussion, if you have a question or a comment, please interact with us. Like, we want your responses. We're virtual, but we're not alone. We're together in this space. And so for me, it was, I mean, there were little things along the way, you know, of how some of my white teachers would talk to our Black and brown students, or, you know, the segregation within, you know, who's in honors and who's in standard classes. But one of the really stark things for me in high school was, I remember my mom drove me to school every day. She picked me up every day. So I went, you know, to the parent line. And that was also where the student parking lot was. And so it was very visual for me to see all these wealthy white children going to their cars to leave for the day, or to have their parents pick them up, and to have the majority minority students, our Black and brown students, go to the bus pickup, go to walk across the street to the city bus, and to see like the economic inequities, but then also have that reflected in the classroom with, I'm taking AP English and we're talking about invisible man, but you know, the people in the classroom don't understand the lived experiences in this text. And so that was kind of my initial reaction. And then I am from Durham. I went to Durham Public Schools, but I have cousins in the western part of the state, and hearing, you know, their stories in rural North Carolina about, you know, they have textbooks that are 30 some years old. Or my cousin went to the same elementary school that my grandmother went to, and it hadn't been updated since the 80s, and she's my age. So, you know, those kinds of things. So we're aware of these inequities, students are aware of these inequities, parents are aware, but kind of what is being done and what can be done. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah to talk.
Thanks so much, Naomi. And it's just really wonderful to be gathering here today with our partners at NAACP and pastors for North Carolina children. I come today representing my work home, which is the North Carolina Justice Center's Education Law Project, and my movement home, which is the Communities for the Education of Every Child NC Coalition. And today I just wanted to make sure we are all feeling informed and confident in the way we talk about not only the Leandro case, but really what this moment signifies for us individually, for our school communities that we're a part of, and really for our state. So I want to just start kind of with the two pieces of news, I guess, that we're going to be discussing today. So the first is the fantastic and exciting and motivating news, which is that the Leandro Plan will have a disproportionate benefit on Black students in particular, and students really who have been historically marginalized and the most harmed by deliberate disinvestments in school communities and deliberate underfunding of public education. So that's the good news. But the news that is part of that, which is the unacceptable news, is that because there's going to be a disproportionate benefit on our Black students, we see an attack. The opponents of Leandro have been waging a very coordinated and well thought out resistance to, and now very overt attack to what Leandro signifies, and the progress that we know our courts have told us, and our school communities have told us, and our children have told us, the change is needed. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the opportunity to be organizing around Leandro, And we're also going to talk about what the opposition to Leandro means and how it is a real consequential moment for our communities and for advocates. So I just wanted to start off, first just talking about, what the purpose of public education is. And when we think about, in particular, the story of public education in North Carolina, we're talking about transforming a system to be inclusive and to be just and to be equitable and to serve students that it was really never intended to serve. So our work is very much about disrupting inequities. And there's a couple key moments that we've learned from. We have taken our inspiration largely from organizations and movements led by NAACP. We know that there are a couple truths that when certain factors are present, there is the opportunity for social change and progress to be made. So our movement at Every Child NC draws from that rich civil rights legacy, that proud struggle that North Carolina has been a part of since our beginnings. We know that we have to focus on system-wide policy change. It's not enough to advocate in my child's school or my local school community for some changes to benefit some students. We know that the change that's needed is change that's needed for every child in every school district. And so that change, that policy change, has to come from the state. And our priority students, again, are the students that have been the most harmed by these disinvestments. So our Black and Brown and other students of color, our students from rural counties, our students from households with low incomes, our emergent bilinguals, our English learner students, our students with disabilities, and our early childhood education learners as well. And this work, it's not enough to be advocating for more money to be invested in public education. Leandro at its heart is about disrupting inequities. The money is absolutely essential, and we're going to talk a little bit about how the money matters. But if this work isn't grounded in at its core the need to disrupt that system that is harming our children, then we're not going to see the level of change that's needed. So that's just a couple factors that we know need to be present, and we are building power in our school communities. We're a multiracial coalition, and we're employing all of the different tools and strategies and tactics that we have as community members and as advocates. So I just wanted to do a little bit of level setting first. When we talk about, Leandro is our landmark state funding lawsuit, right? And so funding, is something that can be pretty complex, and not everyone is, engaged in the local process of how we create our local school budgets. But essentially, not much has changed since the days of this schoolhouse. We still rely on this incredibly inequitable system of supporting public education through local tax dollars. And so it's no surprise that in any school district across our state, you're going to see a story of have and have nots. The students that are going to schools that are well-resourced and are receiving a high-quality education, and students that are not receiving the education that they're owed because of under-resourced classrooms. And so when we think about whose responsibility it is, I want everyone to remember that North Carolina's constitutional mandate is really exceptional. We're the only state in the country that has such a clear and explicit mandate that provides protection for the right for every child to receive the public education that they deserve. And that's something we should feel proud of, and it's something that that we continue to lift up when we talk about Leandro. And the vast majority of our funding has to come from the state per our Constitution. So we have some funding, of course, that comes from the federal level, and then some from our state dollars. But the vast majority comes from the state, and legally it should come from the state. So you might ask, well, why do we have all of these funding fights at the local level, right? Like, I'm in Durham, and of all the school districts in the state, I think Durham is one of the higher districts, if not the highest, that commits an incredibly high percentage of our local tax dollars to support public education. And much of that is because we're trying to fill the gaps in coverage, fill the holes that have been left by, years of declining investments from the state. So that's where Leandro enters the picture, right? Leandro is a longstanding, far too long. We've been fighting 27, some odd going on 30 years that this case has been with us. But this is the vehicle that we can use as advocates to defend our children's education rights. And at its essence, this case is about disrupting those entrenched funding inequities that lead to inequitable outcomes for children. If you look at, and we've got Miss Jackie, our movement colleague in Hope County. I don't like to pick on our friends in Orange County, but this is just to show the difference in that state average of what our local dollars can contribute to our children's education. So, of course, in a county like Orange, there's a large potential for tax collection. There's a big tax base there. So it should be no surprise that that's the amount that they can contribute, over $5,000. Do families or community members in Orange County value education any more than any other community? Absolutely not. Our friends in Hope County don't value public education any less. Those students don't have any less of a claim to a high quality education. They don't have the tax base. That's all this is about. They don't have the local funding ability to compete and fund their schools at the level as our friends in Orange County. So that at its heart is what Leandro is seeking to disrupt. North Carolina, our opponents, and unfortunately right now, the people in charge of making policy decisions that impact our children, there's a lot of massaging of the numbers and, oh, we're really not that bad. And, but at every metric, every national, standard reporting, it has us in the lowest grouping of states in the country for funding level, for funding distribution, and for funding effort, which means the amount that we could be spending on public education given our growing economy. North Carolina's got money. People are moving to North Carolina. We've got a lot of opportunities in our state, and those opportunities are not being equally enjoyed by everybody in our state. And that's largely because of the underfunding that we're seeing in public education. So I'm not going to go into too many details. Leandro, it's frustrating how long this case has been dragged out, but just a couple, right? Just a couple key highlights. Families brought this case. Families are the ones that sued the state. Families from from 5 low wealth districts, Hope, Halifax, Cumberland, Robeson, and Vance, came together and said, this is not right. Our children are not getting the same education as their counterparts in other districts. And we won, Leandro. I just want us to all remember, right? It's not in dispute, right? We won, Leandro. It was found that the state was not providing a constitutional education, right? And it set out the need and the requirements to remedy that constitutional violation. And of course, our leaders at NAACP, joined the case as well. We have been following NAACP's lead in really communicating the urgency and the significance of this case, right? And so there was stalled progress for many years. It was held up in Judge Manning's court, and there was a lot of hand wringing, and there was a lot of kind of finger wagging from Democrat administrations and Republican. We're just going to say it, right? Nobody was getting this right. Nobody was committing to fulfilling our requirements under Leandro. But then we saw a couple important changes, and as advocates, we started to organize, knowing that there was going to be some potential for movement finally in the case. We had Governor Cooper was committed through the Governor's Commission to really examining where we're at with Leandro. And we got a new judge, Judge David Lee, who came with some fresh eyes and some much needed urgency. And the parties of the case agreed. They said, all we've been hearing is that we don't know how much money it would cost, and we don't know what we would spend that money on. So let's figure it out. And so the parties agreed to a historic study, a deep dive investigation of our entire public education system by the premier group in the country that does this. It's called WestEd, and we all probably remember that WestEd report that dropped right before pandemic. And it was an incredibly comprehensive study of our system. But if we don't know anything else about what that report said, I want us to all remember that that report showed that North Carolina is further away today in bridging opportunity gaps and ensuring a constitutional education than when this case started in the mid-90s. And so that led to the next chapter in our shared story. And I think at this point, am I going to kick it back over to you, Naomi?
You can, if you would like. Sure, yeah. Oh, okay, hold on. It was a little early, but I can get there, I promise. Okay. No, you're good. That was wonderful. So this is kind of where we are today. And so by today, I mean a little bit 2021, a little bit 2022. So, as Sarah was saying, like we had this extremely long period of inaction and wondering what can we do and how much is it going to cost? And so now we have that. We have this Leandro Plan. It was accepted by the courts, by Judge Lee in June of last year. The General Assembly, last year they were in session for their long session. So they had time to create their new budget to include the Leandro Plan. And Judge Lee saw, they're not really, the budget that they've come up with doesn't fully fund the plan for the first 2 years because it's an 8-year plan. And so he, in November, decides to order the allocation of $1.7 billion, which is the first 2 years of the plan, to order those funds to be released. And to be clear, those funds were available. It's not that we didn't have the money, we just didn't have the political will. And so in November 30th, the North Carolina Court of Appeals blocked that decision. In March of this year, the North Carolina Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case. I don't believe they've set a date for that yet. We're hoping sometime this summer. And Judge Lee was also replaced with Republican Judge Robinson. And then last month, Judge Robinson issued a new order because the order from Judge Lee was struck down by the Court of Appeals. And his new order shows a bipartisan belief from the courts that the General Assembly, our state legislator, has unfunded or underfunded our education system, that we've put more money away in reserve than is required by law. And he's determined that the state owes $785 million to fund years 2 and 3 to make up for the underfunding of this past year in order to be, keep up with the plan. So that's kind of where we are now. Like I said, we're waiting for this court case to go to the Supreme Court. And to kind of Sarah's point earlier, this case is no longer about whether or not our schools are being fully funded. We know the answer. The answer is no. It's about, do we have the political will to do what's right? And that's why voting is so important, which I know I don't need to talk to y'all about because I know y'all know. But kind of what's in the plan? We've been talking about it, but like what are the actual details? And what does it mean? So it's a general roadmap is kind of how it's referred to of how we get to a baseline education, that sound basic education, right? So it has different elements, but these are the 7 or so elements that all kind of the policy changes and funding changes are going to try and get at, right? So 1, we want high quality, diverse, supported teachers. We know the importance of having representation in classrooms, of having diverse experience in classrooms, having diverse experiences as principals and administration. We want adequate and equitable funding, right? Going back to that picture of Orange County and Hope, right? Even Orange County and counties who have the ability to fund more of their education than counties like Hope. That doesn't mean that they don't still lack in funding areas, right? Because they're still limited. And assessment and accountability systems to make sure that, yes, we have the money, but is it being used correctly? Do we need to correct? Maybe we thought we needed more money for school nurses, and we did that, but we also need more money, you know, for counselors as well. So assessing and accounting for those funds. Supporting low-performing schools and districts, right? Some schools need more support than others. And it's not just K through 12. This also includes early education, pre-K, Smart Start, because learning starts, you know, as babies. It doesn't start when you enter the kindergarten classroom. And then alignment of high school to college and career opportunities, making sure that our students, when they leave the public education system, that they are prepared to enter higher education or to have some sort of career opportunities for their life. So that's the general elements of the plan. Sarah kind of talks about it a little bit earlier. The plan identifies these priority groups, which are also our priority groups as a coalition. And so these are early childhood learners, Black and Brown students, students with disabilities, students from low-income households, working class folks, students living in rural areas, and English language learners. And these are the groups that are historically left out of this funding conversation, of policy conversations. But they go to school. They're still a part of our education system, and they still deserve a right to a sound basic education. And so what does this mean for your district? How can you like personalize this? On our website, there is a tool for K through 12, and then there's also one for early education of what this would mean for your school district. And if you scroll down, you get to pick this little bar right here will show you your county. It's in alphabetical order, I think. This is Forsyth County. So for Forsyth County, they would get an overall 51.7% increase in funding by the time the plan is implemented, right? That could mean they would get, these numbers could mean that they would get 422 more teachers or 40 more psychologists. And a little bit of the beauty with this plan is that districts get to decide how the money is spent within their allotment categories. And so what I mean by that is they could fund 422 teachers, but maybe the district decides, you know, we need to be paying our teachers more, or we need to be giving them more benefits so that they stay and it's keeping up with the standard of living. So maybe that number is actually a little bit lower because they're paying them more and they have more benefits. So they're not able to, you know, fund all of those. But that's just the general idea. If you want to know what's going on in your district, that's the website. We'll also put it in the chat and in any follow-up, but it's really helpful. And as well for early education, it shows how much money you'd get for Smart Start, North Carolina Pre-K, which is for eligible 4-year-olds and things like that. We also have these district one-pagers, which kind of summarize what's in that chart. And if you scroll a little farther down on that same web page and you click your district sheet, it might pop up. We're working through having those for each district. You know, we're still human people, so sometimes it's hard to crank out over 100 districts at one time, but we're working on it. I think we have maybe almost 20 up there right now. And all of the districts are in the district tool, so you still have the information. But kind of what this would mean for Halifax, for example, which is another original county, but it would mean Halifax would get a 41% increase in funding. And so for them, that could mean 15 more teacher assistants. It could mean 8 more community school coordinators, right? That's 140% increase for textbooks. And then for early education, they could have 31 more slots for North Carolina pre-K. And it's 362% increase in Smart Start. Okay, early education is super expensive and it's not accessible for a lot of folks, right? The average early education cost for one child, it's just one child. In North Carolina, it's the same as 1 year at a public university. That's a lot of money, and it's not accessible. So to provide more funding for programs, to allow for more subsidies so people can access it, that kind of thing. And then for more urban area, for Charlotte-Mecklenburg, it would be a 30% increase in funding. That could mean 762 more teacher assistants, right? Teacher assistants are so important, especially when we have larger class sizes or you have lots of students with different learning abilities, right? And again, much more funding for North Carolina Pre-K and Smart Start. So this funding is really important, and the use of the funds in a way that provides our education system with mechanisms to correct a lot of the inequities over the last however many years, it's super important. And so now, where are we today? While we wait for the Supreme Court to hear the case, we have another school year that's ending and schools being underfunded and under-resourced. We have early education teachers leaving the field, and it's still being inaccessible for a lot of working class folks. And our students and our families, they continue to suffer. And so I want to turn it over for a few minutes to Marcus and to Miss Jackie and Suzanne to talk a little bit about, how are we mobilizing in different areas, and what can we do? And so Marcus, you were a previous educator, you're a leader in this education space. From your perspective, what is this opposition really about? And what can we do? What is Every Child NC doing to fight back against that?
Thank you, Naomi, and want to say good evening to everyone. I want to give greetings to President Maxwell. I want to also recognize executive leadership in the NAACP at various levels, including district leadership, and of course, the mighty local branch leadership, and Chairman Blow for creating this opportunity to have this conversation. I am a member of the state conference by way of the Sampson County branch of the NAACP, and coming from Eastern North Carolina, wanting to be involved in education was one of the main things that made me want to become a teacher and come back. And then in 2012, overnight, the legislature stripped funding for education, stripped funding for teacher pay. They increased class sizes. They took teacher assistants out of the classroom. They reduced the number of nurses. And I think about just 2 weeks ago in Bladen County, an individual that many of you all may know, Dr. Antonio Beatty, Bladen County Schools Superintendent for Human Resources, lost her life in this public schools battle. This is a battle and this is a fight, and I really recognize, even outside of the classroom, even outside of having students or children in public education, we have to recognize the connectivity. And I'm glad that we have this opportunity, even after the General Assembly's done what they've done. The North Carolina NAACP continued to fight. Since 1994 has been a part of this issue. And I think what Attorney Joyner is lifting, General Counsel Joyner is lifting, is a very valid question around this next level of engagement. Finding individual chapter leadership to engage in litigation as plaintiffs is one piece. But I think this conversation that Chairman Blow is bringing to us asks us and begs of us as a state conference, how do we get deeper? How do we really get into the branches that are seeing the lived reality of underfunding of education result in jobs not coming to your counties, or individuals not being able to come back and live in your areas? I want to go back to Sampson County, and I would love to one day be able to be in an education system that is going to fully prepare and fully pay all teachers, regardless of where you are in the spectrum. And until we get there, we have to fight. And this state conference is no stranger to fighting. One of the things that I think we need to recognize about this attack is no different than what we're seeing around reproductive justice. It's no different than what we're seeing around healthcare. And the way that we need to educate folks, especially as we get into this midterm election cycle, everybody's going to have the popularity politics. But what are the real issues that we need to take to the polls? Leandro is one of those issues. We fought as a state conference around the litigation and the ongoing information around the dollar per dollar investment. It doesn't just land on the state legislature. It lands on county officials who are on the ballot this year. It lands on an understanding of Board of Education members who are on the ballot this year. And many of you all have talked to these individuals in forums in the primary. Now that we're past that and we're getting into these summer months where folks are on break, I want us to look at Leandro as an opportunity to build strength in the state conference, build strength in branches. This is a recruitment tool for educators to join the branches across North Carolina in this fight, to bring families into our membership in a way that we haven't in years past. And in this moment, I think the best way that we can advocate is understanding our youth, our families, our teachers, and our entire community, because a lot of our low-wage workers are a part of the school system. This is a way to really bring together and galvanize through the NAACP on a local level, the power to make sure that young individuals, particularly Black teachers, are able to stay in county, to make sure Black students are able to learn. It's funny when we talk about what the state allows to pass, even though they won't allow funds to go to our schools, they'll allow garbage to go in these counties. Sampson County is home to one of the largest plants that ends up putting garbage from across the state and other countries into that city, into that community. Same thing for other areas that are original plaintiffs. And so we really have to get down to connect the dots. And in this network, and I think there's a slide that really explains where we're going with this action. Every Child NC in the past 3 years that they've launched have really looked at not just the litigation or legislation, but the people that are impacted and the organizations that we need to build together to create this fight forward. And in this level, the engagement is just as serious because we can do things in the General Assembly or we can do things in the courts, but that's not going to move the basis of funding that needs to happen at a local level. Talking to our school board members and getting our school board members to adopt resolutions around Leandro is important right now. There have been 4 streams of funding that have come through local governments, through federal government. Your stimulus package that came through 2 years ago, the ARP funds that have come in tranches, the second tranche is coming in June, the ESSER funds that are attached there. And in all of these different pockets, unlike Leandro, there is not specifics that guarantee that our communities can get the funding that they need to build back. And so I think there's a real necessity right now to understand how we need to build in this deeper coalition. If you can pull up the 2 slides that I have, and then Suzanne, I think, is going to talk about the strength in numbers in this kind of building of a coalition. But we've got to work together and figure out how to ensure that every child in this situation across the state of North Carolina understands there is a 7 organization member-led coordinating committee and then 40 partner organizations from across the state of North Carolina that have been working to make this one of the largest, fastest growing coalitions around education in the state of North Carolina. And we need to make sure that NAACP is listed as member 8 in this organization member-led coordinating committee. I think there's one additional slide that I have under my section before I have the transition. But in this moment, we are also asking individuals to help us unpack the plan in a real way, create the power that helps us create the space, legislative briefings on a local level, community engagement and education, outreach, petitions. We have several petitions that are ongoing between the governor and legislatures to make sure that they continue to push for Leandro, and then supporting partners in this moment with funds to ensure that you can get this work done. Branches that are on tap that have already done this work on a large level. And this last slide shows you exactly how you can engage to make sure that whenever you are coming to the table to help us do local town halls around Leandro or having education sessions, that we're able to support with mini grants and other ways to resource the ability to push for Leandro in your local communities. And so with that, I'm going to toss it now. The conversation goes to Ms. Jackie.
Yeah, Miss Jackie, I thank you for that, Marcus, and for setting us up so well for Miss Jackie. But Miss Jackie is a part of the Hoke County NAACP, and then she's also a dropout prevention specialist in Hoke. But Miss Jackie, if you could talk a little bit about how you are leading in Hoke County with the Leandro Plan, the advocacy that you're doing out there, and what it means for you.
Hello, everybody. Certainly, thank you, Naomi and Marcus. Always a pleasure to hear you expound on this great work. I've been involved with Leandro from Leandro's very beginning, given that my child was a student in Hoke County High School during the time that Leandro was the lawsuit was actually filed. While she was a class of 98, the lawsuit was filed 4 years, her freshman year. And I can attest, I think the question was asked earlier, when did you realize the inequity of North Carolina schools? And just realizing the inequity of Hoke County schools compared to Cumberland County schools was staggering. And the fact that I personally knew that there were not enough textbooks. Students couldn't bring home textbooks to do homework assignments. So homework assignments were therefore limited because they didn't have enough books for every kid to take home to further engage in the lessons that was taught. Also, when it came down to the science lab, I was a very active parent. And so when I went to the school to inquire about what the curriculum looked like, what was the requirements for the students for that particular subject area, and I was given a syllabus that says labs and et cetera, et cetera. And when asked to see the labs, there were no labs. When I tell you there were no labs, there were no labs. There was not even a single test tube. So I'm saying, well, how in the world can you prescribe a subject matter that you can't even teach because you don't have the resources? But yet our kids were held accountable for that information at the end of the year, as far as testing. And then with respect to Rob, I knew Rob personally, knew Rob's family personally. And what Rob's classes were able to do, they were able to look at videos from student work in Durham. And they would see what those students were doing. And therefore they would copy it just from a video perspective. They were getting what they should have been getting in Hoke County. So that was one area of inequity. And also the fact that we didn't have enough of books. So when Cumberland County, which was right next door, discarded their used books, our Board of Ed sent truckloads to Cumberland County to gather up those books and brought them across the whole county. So Cumberland County was getting new books and our kids was getting discarded crap. And so that was one of the things. And then the fact that, again, as an active parent, along with Leandro's, we knew that there was a level of inequities. And so we started making noise about that. And then there was the lawsuit. When the lawsuit came about, we weren't surprised at all. But what we were surprised at is that the length of this lawsuit, this whole 20-something, 30-something years, and I've been here that long fighting with this case. Now, what we are seeing now in Hoke County, what the NAACP has been doing, we've been partnering with the North Carolina Justice Center for years. Have met a number of leaders there, Sarah and Naomi, and we've been partnering with them. I can probably 10 years or longer working through this. But what we are doing in Hoke County, what we've done now, as far as the Leandro Resolution, we have met with our Board of Education members. We've sat down and we talked to them. We said, look here, we need your signatures. We need your support. Because at the end of the day, education is on the ballot and it remains on the ballot. And for Hope County students, we want our fair share of equity. We want our fair share of opportunities for our students. And while we have a difference of opinion about how that is to be carried out, it really didn't matter as long as the parents and the community confronted them. Well, guess what? It wasn't a big fight. They all agreed. They signed off on it. We attended the board meetings, and you got to attend these meetings. And if you can't attend, set somebody up to attend your local Board of Education meetings. Be on that agenda. If there's a public 3-minute, speak to them. Utilize those 3 minutes to say what you need to say. And if your 3 minutes run up, get somebody to tag behind you like we did, and they'll pick it up from there. So you can get not only 3 minutes, you might find out you get 12 minutes from the team of people that are there. But needless to say, they signed the resolution. And in signing that resolution, we were saying to them that we want you to engage and we want your full support and your full advocacy for fully funding Leandro. So they were agreeable and they signed it, submitted it. Then we moved from there and we went to our county commissioners and we met with the county commissioners. We said, hey, you guys are part of the funding process here. You guys know what we need and we need your help and we need your support and we're not going to take down, we're going to keep coming. Well, it wasn't a fight. You know how they say, if you don't ask, you never know, right? So we asked, you know, closed mouth don't get fed. So you got to speak up for your people. That's right. So you got to speak up because we need to feed our children. We need to empower our children. We need to break that education gap, you know, and so they agree. So they are fully, when I tell you they're fully on board with this process, and we have been doing a documentary. There's a documentary and it should be released soon with the North Carolina narrative artists. They came to Hope County. They spent 2 days in Hope County. They spent 2 days in our school system. They met teachers, they met students, and they met leadership. And they talked about what Leandro meant to them and how having the funding for from Leandro, what it would do for Hope County. We are school, I work as a dropout prevention. One of the things that I realized that I saw when I went to the high school, there was this disproportionate minority suspensions. I mean, the kids were being, the minority students were just, I mean, every day somebody was being suspended. And at the same time, Naomi, you spoke to the fact that AP classes and honor classes. Well, I was looking around and I didn't see it. And I remember speaking to the principal who happened to be a white fella. And I asked him, I said, how is it we have this major populace of minority students, but we have like fewer than 5% of our African-American students in honors classes and AP classes? What is going on? What's wrong with this picture? And so with that in mind, and it didn't hurt that he knew I was the current NAACP branch president. So when we had that conversation, we began to sit down and meet with teachers, and guess what? That changed. So now when we look at our AP and honors classes, we have some awesome students, and some of those students that were having some real challenges with ISS and learning deficits, it wasn't they couldn't learn, they were in the wrong classes that weren't meeting their needs. And with further funding, just think of what we can do with these students who are deemed problem children when they're not. They're absolutely not. It's that you need a high quality level teacher to be able to recognize the needs of that student and to pull that out so that that student can get his or her needs met. So we worked on our suspension rate as a branch, and we spent time talking to our Board of Education members. We have a Board of Education election coming up. We are rallying the community. One of the things that we're doing on behalf of Every Child NC, we wrote a grant with them and received the grant. So what we're doing in this summer, what we're going to be doing, we have partnered with parents and students. parents and students from the middle school, parents and students from the high school, and also from the elementary. But we're not focusing as much on the elementary as we are the middle school and the high school, because therein lies our most critical inequities, right in there. So we are focusing on those. And what we're doing is we have a curriculum that we're going to be meeting with these parents and these students, and we're going to be showing them, we're going to be talking about Leandro. We're going to break it down for them so they fully understand that how Leandro can work for them and works for us. And we are going to be training them to be advocates, to show up at those meetings, to speak to those principals, to ask certain questions. We'll have a list of talking points that they can utilize universally when they speak to their principal, when they ask, what is the agenda for this year? You know, how are you dealing with discipline? You know, how are we talking about the arts? Here in Hope County, you know, there's this big thing about, we have an awesome band, we have a phenomenal band, and we have these plenty of sponsors for our athletic department. But what we in the NAACP is saying, you know what, there's more to our kids than athletics. You know, you're giving a kid a football, but he can't even read. Okay, what does that mean about equity and inequity? We're setting them up for failure. These kids are playing football, but are they college material? Are they even workforce material? So those are inequities that we are seeing, that we're talking about, and that we're bringing forth. And we're saying to our parent student education advocacy committee, these are the issues that we want you to engage our local Board of Education members. These are issues that we want you to speak to when you're having a problem with your student. We don't want you to go to the school ranting and raving. We will sit with you and we will show you how to be your child's best advocate. Because when you go into these schools, if you go in ranting and raving, screaming and cursing, all they do is call law enforcement and bar you. But who can be their best advocate except the parent for their child? And it's up to us to teach them, train them, help them advocate so that they can go in and get what they need for their child. Not only their children, when we make opportunity happen for one child, we make opportunity happen for all children. And so Hope, as a Leandro baby, and as I said before, we've been carrying this baby for a long time. We've been impregnated with this baby for a long time, and we're in the pushing mode now. She is ready to deliver, and we're in the pushing mode now. And so we need everybody on board to help us say, push, push this baby out. The judges have already said what is wrong and what we need. We want our share, and we don't only want our share for Hope County, we want your share as well for your county. But we know that collectively, we can bring this baby in to full development, healthy and strong, so that we can have healthy, strong students. We can have a healthy, strong principal leadership. We can have strong teachers, not just some fly by night. Let me tell you, I don't know how much of you all review your Board of Ed minutes, but every month, Hope loses between 20 to 25 teacher turnovers, okay? Every month. And for Hope County, that's a lot. And what is that turnover about? It's all about, again, funding, lack of resources, lack of leadership. And so those are the issues that we continue to work through and push through. But again, this baby is ready to deliver, and Leandro is what we've been waiting for, and is what we need. And together, collectively, why can't we do it? Why can't we do it? As a unit, the NAACP has been fierce in advocating for education. It is known for what it can do when it comes to pushing for education. We can see it historically. So within our local counties and our local branches, we can do the same thing. We can do the same thing. It doesn't matter. Wake is much larger than Hope, but Hope is just as worthy and just as deserving as Wake, Mecklenburg County, and all of those counties. We are still amongst those who want the best for our community and our children. I mean, I can get off this topic. I can go on and on, but basically what I just really want to let you know is that we are here and our commissioners know, our Board of Education know, and when we are going to have our candidates forum, and we just waited for them because we have 3 seats that are open, 3 seats that are up. And I want you to know that, yes, personally, we have told 2 of our, well, 1 at least of our board members, no, don't run again, because we're gonna make sure you don't run again. All right. I mean, you've not done a service. When we lost, the high school lost the principal. Okay. Hope County school system is much to offer. It does have some great opportunities for our students, but we can't facilitate that greatness without the resources that we need. Even the programs that we have, our CTE department is phenomenal, but we're still sending our kids out away from home, not fully ready to be competent and meeting what we say global, to compete globally, because we don't have the necessary tools, or we don't have the necessary funding. You can give us a little something, but that's not going to work for us. We need the funds. And if we get our 52 million plus out of that 758 million, just think about what the rest of North Carolina can do with our kids, and see what can happen when our kids really do expand and go beyond high school, because it's not just about high school and middle school. These kids are going to be bringing economics back to the community. They're going to be bringing resources back to the community.
Yes, Miss Jackie, and thank you so much for all that you've said. I know it's coming on 6 o'clock, so if y'all have to leave, I get it. It sounds like people over here are very busy on a Sunday. You've got another meeting. Okay.
Oh yeah, girl. I told you I come from a
but
graduation.
Oh, okay. Congrats to the graduate. But if you have to leave, we understand. But if you can hang on another 10 minutes, we're going to try, and wrap up and answer some of these great questions in the chat. But I do want to give Suzanne Miller a chance to talk about her work as well. And let me get my slides back together. But Suzanne, would you like to talk about the work that you're doing? You're a partner of Every Child NC and a leader, a faith leader. So go ahead.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and be working with Antonio, who's a board member of Pastors for North Carolina Children, and our partners with Every Child NC. And we are just excited to be continuing to develop this partnership with the NAACP. We are mobilizing faith communities for public schools. And so we have developed a curriculum as a something to do. Often we get the question of, so what do we do about this? And Pastors for North Carolina Children has developed a program we call Mission Amplify. It is a voter engagement curriculum. It is an advocacy training curriculum. It's a way for congregations and community groups. So if your branch would like to participate, we would love that. If you know of other community groups that are looking for ways to engage in education support, it is open and welcome to anyone. You do not have to be faith-based to participate. But we are engaging groups in writing postcards to our legislators at the House and Senate in North Carolina 6 times during the year. And those are all related to topics around Leandro. So I put information in the chat about finding out more. We're going to be doing a training tomorrow at 1, so we can help to explain a little bit more in detail about how we're training advocates. But it's the idea of taking folks who have not done advocacy before, people who might really, really care, but just don't quite know how to speak out at a board meeting or how to go to Raleigh and advocate at the legislature. This is a way to step them along in that. And we start with postcards, and then we'll be going on to meetings and phone calls and advocacy days, but we want to start where people are. And so this opportunity is a way for you to dip your toes into advocacy that's not scary, and gives you that foundational information about what Leandro is and why it's really important. As faith leaders in this state, we really feel like Public schools are a public good, and they are a way that we build the beloved community among our neighbors. They're the ways that we show love to our neighbors, and so they are a crucial part of our communities that are worthy of our support. The next slide also just shows the link here. Here's some of the postcards that we're writing, and the link for more information. I can send you that, but just wanted to briefly mention that as an opportunity. And continue to push the resolution. That is a huge piece of this advocacy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I'm going to change it up a little bit we're going to answer y'all's questions kind of at the end, but while the slides are up, I'm just going to run through really quickly some of the things that have already come up, but just potential kind of things that we do. So we have student-centered advocacy and but potential next steps specifically. So like we mentioned, convening in your districts is so important, and there are so many different ways that you can do it. You can be involved with Mission Amplify and writing letters and sending postcards. You could introduce folks to the budgeting tool that I showed earlier, right? People don't know that Leandro exists, and they don't know that we had, an over $6 billion revenue last year that didn't go to anything, that could have gone to education, that could have gone to healthcare. And so that knowledge is really important. You can hold meetings with, your community members, your state legislators. If you know your school board members, if you know your county commissioners, ask them, do they know about Leandro? We had someone recently say that their county commissioner had no idea what Leandro was. So those conversations are important. Telling our personal stories, like Ms. Jackie was saying, like I was saying, they're important too. They make us realize that like what's happening to me or my child and my student in my school, it's unique because it's my student, it's my child, but it's not that unique in terms of the general inequities that are happening across the state. Mobilize as a statewide organization, right? Turn out for the court date when it's set. We'll have information on Every Child NC social media, on our website, I'm sure. And obviously turn out for elections. Local elections are just as important as state elections, okay? And like I said, talk to your local and state elected officials about their position on Leandro, right? This isn't, do you support public schools? This is, do you support fully funding the Leandro Plan? And will you vote for a budget that reflects that? And then as we've talked about the local Leandro Resolution, excuse me, so you can create within your own district, what are your district priorities, right? It might be different from your neighboring district's priorities as far as like how much money you want to go here and how much money you want to go there. And present that to your school board. Let them know that like community members are aware of the things and the needs that they have. And then encourage them to pass the local Leandro resolution saying that they support the Leandro Plan and that if passed, when they get the funds, they're going to use it to uphold those elements of the plan to provide every student with a sound basic education. And then you can always join Every Child NC. We meet monthly, third Wednesdays at 12. Come to our events. We have a YouTube page where we have started posting our events if you missed them. But get involved as much as you can. And so I saw, excuse me, some questions come up in the chat, and one was, have studies or reports been done to examine links between tax bases and student achievement? I'm not aware of any in particular. I'm not sure if Sarah, if you're aware of any. I'm sure that there's a link between, your neighborhood socioeconomic status and student achievement, but I'm not aware of any specific ones relative to North Carolina. Go ahead, Sarah.
No, yeah, we can ask our friends. We partner with the good people over at the Budget and Tax Center for North Carolina. And one upcoming advocacy opportunity and a need that we're going to have is to direct folks to taking action on pushing people to contact their lawmakers and demand that we repeal the elimination of the corporate taxes. We could have paid for the entire 8-year comprehensive Leandro Plan. We could have paid for that easily if we hadn't made those changes in our tax system and our tax code that is leaving billions of dollars every year in potential revenue. Those dollars are not coming into our communities. They're not coming into our public education system, and they're not going towards meeting our obligation with Leandro. So that's a big opportunity. We'll have an action alert, again, being led by Budget and Tax Center, to share as a follow-up to this meeting today.
Thank you, Sarah. Right, that tax piece is so important because last year, we wouldn't have had to raise, the average North Carolinian's tax amount, and if the repeal of the corporate income tax does not get eliminated or readjusted during this legislative session, that tax burden is again placed on our everyday people. So another question that came up in the chat was, what about charter schools, right? Our charter schools are given money similarly to public schools, right? They use public money, and for across the state, they're often a way for white flight to be acceptable from schools, and a way for our schools to remain segregated. So the Leandro Plan does provide some funding for charter schools, but not in the same amount that it is currently. It's shifted differently, and it provides more funding for what are termed community schools, which are similar to charter schools, but they allow for more resources for community members, etc.
And the community schools model, I'll just jump in. The community schools model, particularly here in Durham, it is such a point of pride. The community schools model is about not only ensuring that those wraparound supports and services, are present for our students, but it's really creating a cultural shift. It's creating some, important opportunities to ensure equitable parent and family participation. So it's a really important model that through Leandro and through the placement of community schools coordinators, can help create those conditions so that we can see more schools adopt that model, and this model being brought to districts that really need it. And I'll just mention, the charter schools, and all of these priorities that we've seen the leaders of the General Assembly, as they push to funnel public dollars out of public education and into, these private, they would call it solutions. And it is a drop in the bucket. The vast majority of our children are in our traditional public schools. So, for our advocates, we need to get our house in order. We need to ensure that we are at that bare minimum of, national standards, that constitutional education. Sound and basic should not be aspirational. Sound and basic is about ensuring that some kids over here don't have access to high quality while everybody else is in under-resourced schools. It's about bringing all children up to that basic criteria of sound basic. And until and unless we do that, we don't really want to hear about, these small stab solutions that are really only going to address the needs of select children in every district.
Another thing with community schools, they provide things like washing and drying machines for students, right? And community pantries, things like that. So it's not just like a learning model, it's exactly that. It's to build a community around education. And to a similar point about charter schools, a question was, is litigation possible to make sure that private schools don't get subsidies and charter schools don't get turned over to private schools? And my answer to that would be, I'm sure litigation is possible. I am hesitant about the litigation route just because, we're 27 years on, 28 almost, on Leandro, and we still don't necessarily have a resolution. So I'm sure that litigation is possible, but the outcome of that litigation, I am pessimistic about. But if someone's really optimistic out there, I fully support you. And then, go ahead.
No, and I'll just say, right, I mean, we all have that scar tissue around Leandro and that it's not delivered. For the purposes of what's at stake this summer, and as we, march over to our state Supreme Court house and demand action on Leandro, that really needs to be our focus right now. And to your point, Naomi, court cases and our lawyers, as much as they're trying, it will disappoint, right? Because we have to keep in mind, Leandro is about the bare minimum, right? So that can't be where we set our sights, our goalpost, right? That's why we work with NAACP, we work with pastors, we work with Black Alliance in Advance, because these are the groups that are pushing that goalpost to where it needs to be for our children. And when we have that vision, we can see Leandro as just a necessary entry point. That is how we get to to the system that we need. And we don't pin all our hopes on Leandro, right? We organize with Leandro. Leandro is an opportunity for us to do our work and to engage our communities, and to just keep that focus on what's needed for children. So before we all get too cynical, I think we need to keep sprinting towards that line. We all need to be turning out, is what I'm saying, for that court hearing this summer.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. And I think you teed up the next question very nicely, which is, in addition to working towards schools being fully funded, what can be done to fully staff schools, and how can we ensure students with disabilities are receiving the services that they are entitled to? And so I'm going to answer that last question first a little bit. Something that we didn't dive too deep into, but is a part of the Leandro Plan, is eliminating the cap on how much funding can be spent on students with disabilities and also students who are English language learners. And the cap right now is statewide, it's about 9%, 8%, somewhere around there. But if your district need is more than that, you can't spend more money. So that's really unfortunate. But to the other point of what can be done to fully staff schools, there's the Governor's Drive Task Force of kind of how can we continue to recruit teachers, how can we provide resources for them. But it's a real economic issue, and it's not just about like I want to be a teacher because I love teaching. It's about I want to pay my rent, and I want to come into a classroom where I don't have to pay for the supplies. And a lot of teachers are very burned out. A lot of school staff are very burned out right now, not just with the pandemic, but with being generally under-resourced. And so it's this larger issue that, I don't even think the Leandro Plan can fully address, in terms of like providing social supports so that our educators, our school staff, like our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, can show up to the work and not have to think about, okay, maybe I need to go and, drive Uber Eats because, I need some food later, that kind of thing. And then finally, Angus Thompson was in our chat talking about the need for allyship with rural white folks. And yes, there is a deep need for that, right? When we talk about Every Child NC, we're an interracial coalition, and that's intentional, right? This work can't be done in silos. It can't be done segregated, right? Especially when the people in power are not reflective of the people that they oppress. And so it's a very important piece. But with that, thank you all for hanging on. I'm going to turn it over to Antonio to round us out for tonight.
Again, thank you, everybody. Certainly Naomi and Suzanne and Sarah and Marcus and Miss Jackie. We want to thank you so very much. And I think that we are to be mindful that the North Carolina public school system is failing to provide every child with a sound basic education that is guaranteed by our Constitution. So we must continue this work, and we must continue this fight. And we must understand that every Black and brown student deserves access to a great teacher and the resources that is needed, and they must be done in a safe learning environment from grade school to the college campuses. students and students of color are deserving of all of this. So I want to thank all of you for coming to this space and for you sharing this time together. Want to extend a very special thank you to President Maxwell and the executive committee of the State Conference of the NAACP for allowing me to do this, and for the amazing leadership that is across every branch of the NAACP and all tiers of leaders, that you continue the work. And I think Ms. Jackie kind of remind us that we got to push. So we got to push until something happens. So let's work on it. Let's go from there. And again, thanks to all as we continue to work and stay connected to make a difference in our great state for the children. Blessings and peace.